honored to be invited. For anyone to ever show any interest in the work that you're doing, because sometimes it can feel like you're sort of paddling along all on your own. And then there is this infectious level of excitement and something that can get you quite excited. And that's been the way Natalia has been corresponding with me. She's been very much someone who's made me very excited to be here with all of you. So I definitely would love to see a lot more passion like hers everywhere. I think it's contagious and it's wonderful. Also, if you don't mind, I don't mind if you're in a, if you're doing things, I'd love to see you. I'm better with faces. So if you'd like to be on camera, great. If you are multitasking and doing other things, or if you're driving, please do not. And I'm happy to see you. I think Beth was sneaking in a bit earlier. It's nice to see you, Jennifer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and begin here because I pack a lot of things so that I can make sure that the time you've asked me to be here is worthwhile for you. Natalia already covered this really quickly, so I just want to tell you a little bit about myself as it relates, as it becomes the context of the information I'm about to offer you. In 2006, I actually was hired at Cal State Northridge, and as a junior faculty member on board, they asked if I would develop the BCBA program out there. And this led to the master's program in applied behavior analysis. So I'm the founder of that program, and it was definitely something that has taught me a lot of lessons. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. I'm fortunate that we get to put out some really strong graduate students. But in this endeavor, I also learned a lot about supervision. And if you recall, back then in 2006, there wasn't really much out there about supervision. The guidelines were not very clear. So we started to develop competency assessments and material that just simply did not exist in the field, really to help the community partners. So our first efforts really, and mine as director of the program at the time, was to work very closely with community partners and building the supervisors that they had so that the supervision experience of the students we were placing out in the community was strong. But as it has always in my life, I've been very fortunate in that I've always taken on work when there is a problem, I move to it. I'm excited to help, but it leads me to a path that sometimes is so much better than I ever would have recognized. And that's been very true for this journey, in that it shifted my entire line of research and focus to supervision practices and training of supervisors, because I learned a lot from the supervisors we were working with directly. I learned a lot from the organizations, and that's led a lot to the consultation work that I do. So this pivot into the community to help the supervisors at the time led to the book that we wrote. But I also want to mention it's really pivoted my career toward helping supervisors. And she's right, I do a lot of work actually with NASA, and I've moved on to do a lot of technology work, but all of this work is also related to training. I'm a fundamental believer that we do not have training that's accessible. When we are training our frontline staff, when we train our supervisors, there's many more people than we have trainers, and we just don't get to be as individualized. So I'm always trying to figure out ways to create simulation-based training that's as real as possible and can provide that. And we're really moving close to that era, I would say. So it's pretty exciting. And then I also have been very obviously interested in quality. So I do want to mention that I worked for BHCOE. I've resigned from my post only to be able to continue to pursue doing some of my consultation work and direct work. A lot of the work I was doing there was akin to some of the consultations I do. I developed assessments and material on supervision. So I really wanted to go on to be able to do that, and that would be a conflict of interest. So I'm glad to be back in the community to be able to work with organizations directly, because that's really a passion of mine. And I get this rare opportunity to do international speaking and training arrangements. And some of that has really influenced some of what I'm going to talk with you about today, because I'm learning that there's absolutely a cultural aspect to some of the burnout we feel and some of the ways we feel in organizations. And then, of course, I can't tell you who I am just in an academic setting and my nerdy self. There's also a real person right here. I am newly married. This is my second marriage. On the very top is my son, who's 24, and I share this because I feel what all of us feel when we're across of RBTs, just directly dealing with my son sometimes, because there's obviously a generational thing going on for them as well. And so he's my clue into the world of his culture, his understanding of work environments. And, my parents are immigrants in this country, so I was raised to sort of work very, very hard to establish a lot. And these contexts, I think, are important with regards to who I am and who you're speaking with today. But all of this has allowed me to become very thankful for the work that we do every day. I am very grateful to be here, but also to have the opportunity to speak with people. And I'm honestly humbled by the experiences I've been afforded to have. And I feel that we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to help people at some of the most difficult times of their lives. In the times that it inevitably, when we're able to be of assistance, we're going to become that major force for them, so that they remember. And to be able to be present, experiencing those with various supervisors has been a very humbling experience for me. So I love my job. But as much as I love my job, I'm very aware that we're walking towards some really difficult times. And this is not new. I'm going to share some of this data with you, but we do have some tough times coming ahead of us. As much as I've loved the service profession, and I cannot think of a better position than to be a behavior analyst, I definitely feel that I'm being tested to the best that I can be. We're being pushed to our limits in many ways. And this is actually discussions that have been had in the Harvard Business Review, and the business world is beginning to really obviously tackle some of this as major issues, because we have had what people called the Great Resignation. This simply is, the number of individuals that are leaving their jobs, or the number of individuals that are saying they're going to turn over, or individuals who are simply not staying within the same positions over time. And this data is actually, I think, some information that shows us that we're not alone here in behavior analysis. And more so, not only we're dealing with this as a whole in the workforce, and there is labor shortage everywhere, there's also other data that I want to share with you. There is some fallacy, and you all may know this already, but I want to share with you that there's some fallacy that the resignation started with the pandemic, that what we're dealing with is a post, or now that we have the pandemic under some level of health control, this is what we're dealing with. And the Harvard Business Review covered this. Any of you know this information? Am I boring you? Can you let me know if you already, is this like stuffy? Okay, cool. I'm like, I don't want to share something that you may have just shared with your organization. But what we do know is that it actually is just a fallacy of how the data is working, that we're feeling the effect of the resignation more now post the pandemic, if there is such a thing as a post-pandemic, really, such that people simply did not leave their jobs in 2020. They were scared. So what we saw was a dip in turnover, because there was a financial fear in letting go of your job. And all we're seeing is that we're just catching right back up to where we were going. So this was a shape up process. It was increasing steadily, and we're just going right back to where we expect it to be had it just continued to increase. So what we're dealing with, folks, is not a COVID event. It is a labor shortage, labor culture shift event, and it is absolutely impacting all of us. It's at the frontline staff level, when you have resignations and turnover, you get a lot of that matriculating work up towards supervisors who end up either having to cover, or they're exhausted from training and retraining other individuals. And then we also have turnover among that group. So we're beginning to really face some difficult times. But the bad news is we are not alone. the good news is we're also not alone. I say bad news because if you have tried to see your veterinarian care, or if you've gone to your dentist anytime recently, you probably have identified that they're all dealing with the same shortage. They're dealing with people who are not at the front office, or they don't have assistants to help, which means that access to care has become limited, and everybody's kind of struggling with providing appropriate access to care. And turnover has tremendous impact. It has impact on our financial vitality in organizations. It has a lot to do with the quality of services we can offer when we're running to deal with crisis all the time, of dealing with people who are not there. It also definitely impacts the rapport we build with families and the schools and the individuals we're serving. And there's clear evidence in the research that it increases parental stress when they're asked about their caregivers and the individuals who are providing them services. And we know that it also impacts at the higher levels, because then operational and clinical knowledge, the institutional knowledge, is constantly shifting because the individuals who have it are leaving. So everyone's kind of grappling to figure out what the institutional knowledge of the place was, which can really impact employee morale as a whole. So these are the difficult times that are upon us. We're dealing with labor shortage difficulties, clear higher turnover rates at a time when we're trying to increase the number of BCBAs and increase the number of providers. And so we're definitely at a place that can increase stress for all of us. Now, moons ago, I did this research. By moons, I mean in 2015. At that time, we were not looking at turnover. It hadn't hit us quite yet, but it was definitely evident to me and my students who were interested in this line of work. And we looked at turnover, and predicted what were some of the best predictors of turnover. And we identified that training and supervision were some of the most important variables. So if people felt trained well, and if they felt happy with their supervisors or felt cared for by their supervisors, that they were more likely to maintain. I share this because actually this has been replicated. So yes, there's newer research you can look up now, and we can actually see that there's additional variables such as collegial support that matters. But time again and again, we're finding the same variables to matter when it comes to turnover among BCBAs. So we know these matter. Now I'm going to show you a slide of across the studies, because I figured you want to know a little bit about turnover before I tell you a little bit about how to mitigate it and how to survive what's coming, which hopefully is the goal of the talk today. But I want to share with you that across studies and across some of the work that I was doing at BHCOE, this was very evident to us. Employees report that they'd like access to professional development and growth. They want to know that they're growing, that they're continuing to increase their skill sets, and that they're becoming an individual who's going to continue to grow organizationally as well. So they look for professional development opportunities. The other is that satisfaction with supervision and satisfaction with training and the quality of training matter with regards to maintaining individuals. In fact, ABAI, there were a couple of studies that covered this and showed very clearly even the frequency of supervision visits matter with regards to likelihood to maintain individuals. And then at that supervisory level, there is some hints that workload matters, as well as the organizational values. If the organization shows values toward patient care, it seems to matter for supervisors, likelihood to maintain and stay at the organization. And this one was a shocker for me, but I want to share it with you. When I saw this in the literature, and then again saw it at BHCOE, some people reported that they didn't feel policies were fair, or that their privacy was sometimes infringed upon, or they didn't feel that their information was kept private, such that employees talked behind their back about things that they didn't think should be public. So I think that makes immediate sense to me, but the fact that it's showing up in the literature says that there's more numbers than we realize, and that we need to kind of be aware that it's happening to our individuals. And last but definitely not least, I had the privilege of interviewing with over 250 people. I put out a call and asked everyone, are you happy with your job? If you're not, talk to me. And qualitatively speaking, the number one thing that everybody said, supervisor, RBT, CEO, it's just that sense of feeling appreciated for the hard work that they do. They put in lots of hours of effort, just feeling like their work is appreciated by families. Any of this surprise you? Is there anything that you can think of that I didn't mention? You can talk to me also via chat. Feel free to drop in stuff. I open another window on the side to do that. I have a lot of audience interest. So if you talk to me, I get very happy that you're with me. And so I want to also, Beth, did you have something to tell me, or are you just raising your hand?
Yeah, both.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. The training is absolutely critical. I'm a big fan of training. I think it's important. I see that when I work with RBTs who finally feel like they have someone seasoned who could really add value and who kind of mothers them a little bit, they appreciate it. However, having said that, agency owners and those that are looking at the bottom line don't see that as billable. Ultimately, it's not billable. So it's a catch-22. And to sit there during a supervision session and intervene with training and some maybe corrective measures in front of the child is not a great idea either. So I think we're stuck between a rock and a hard place with that.
I think you bring up an excellent point. I won't get a chance to go through this today, but I have a talk around those numbers to show you how those numbers do impact organizations. And it is a vicious cycle, because what happens is the RBTs are leaving because they're not receiving training. They feel alone, they're scared, and their leaving is making it more and more probable that the organization cannot put more and more money into training because they are leaving. So it's become an ugly cycle that we need to bust open. And we've done this before as behavior analysts. I can't think of any better group of individuals to have this reality check, but it is a vicious cycle of a behavioral meta contingency that's keeping all that in place that we need to really come to and figure out together. I won't have time to go into that more, but I couldn't agree more with you about that as one of the problems currently. We do know it's a problem, though. And I think that the other part of that is, all of the roles that you just mentioned, the training, the watching in field, the giving feedback. There's so many roles and responsibilities. And this is why I'm quite passionate about working with supervisors, because no matter what we do in those classrooms, no matter what we do during those experience hours, we're simply not preparing people for the diversity of things that they deal with when they come out as clinical supervisors. And we have to be aware of that they are coming out. There's a lot of new BCBAs coming into the field, and they are our face front individuals. They are the ones dealing with the funding entity. They're the ones dealing with the families. They're the ones dealing with the schools. They are the representatives. And as they're dealing with all these individuals, they've not quite exactly been trained to do that job in that way. So it only makes sense that they are on the go training and learning, which means they're learning through trial and error, which means a lot of our emerging BCBAs or BCBAs who've entered the field are quite exhausted because they're constantly walking into potential trial and error opportunities at the same time of dealing with shortage of labor and dealing with their jobs. Now, they are the superheroes of our field, 100%, but there is no superhero manual, not yet, that's been offered to them. And I just wanted to get a sense of all of you. If you could just drop this in the chat, it would be super helpful, just so I can engage and get a sense of, did you feel super prepared for the job when you came out? Were you very well prepared, A, B, well prepared? Or maybe the D and E area, like you were as prepared for some of the things that you're doing today? Very cool. Very cool. We can quickly see everyone sort of coming around that C. I saw a few B's and then a few D's. Very cool. Okay. Thank you so much. Nice, nice. So, that kind of tells you we're somewhat prepared. Many of you felt somewhat prepared for the job. Most of us were not prepared to deal with insurance, and most of us were not prepared to deal with conflicts and some of the things that we are now dealing with. And so we know it's been a promotion without much training. And in fact, 2015, DeGeneres, Reed, and Henley did a study where they asked supervisors, and they found that they were all saying exactly what you're saying, somewhat prepared. And again, these studies are being replicated, and we find people to be still reporting the same. So we have, we have some better training to do for the individuals coming out as well. And I think that, a part of the reason I share that is because what I'm about to talk with you today is called occupational wellness. It is a part of the skill set of every good health professional. This is nursing, social work, marriage and family therapy. These are our sister and brother professions who are out there dealing with very similar issues with regards to family conflicts and family issues, and dealing with challenging behavior and dealing with other people's needs. And that compassion fatigue is real and is something that they learn to deal with. But we have not embedded these trainings for BCBAs. And I want to share with you that this is just one of many things I feel that we're missing for a lot of our supervisors. But in having said that, I do want to give a qualifying statement here, and it's really an important one for me. I'm about to talk with you about occupational wellness skills, which can make a supervisor feel like, okay, I got to go out there and do these things, which means I take charge of my burnout. I take charge of my turnover. And I want that. I want you to feel, hopefully, excited about changing the state of affairs for yourself. But I also want to know that the research about this is very clear when we look at medicine and other medical professionals and other individuals, and that you cannot do this alone. And that when we look at occupational wellness and burnout, it takes two. It takes both the organization, so organization-directed intervention is needed, as well as person-directed intervention. Today, I'm going to solely focus on that person-directed intervention. But we're all behavior analysts here. You know as well as I do that the environment matters. So I can give you any skill that I can give you, but if that environment is not going to nurture those skills and house them and provide other supports, we know some of the organization level care that's provided, for example, is a culture shift or looking back to identify if there is a problem, such as the privacy issues we just talked about, identifying if there's a gossip or a culture issue. And, when I'm called upon to deal with those things within organizations, I feel like we can make huge differences by simply addressing some of those what seems like tiny problems that have major impact across the organization because they're quite toxic. So, I want to make sure that it's clear. I'm going to talk about what you can do as the person to maintain, but I absolutely think it takes a village. So I don't want to, neglect the other portion of this today. So I'm going to give you 5 total tips today. Lots of cats, yes, lots of cats. Some dogs, cats have a lot more faces. They make a lot of more impressions. But the thing that I want to share with you on the tips that I have today is that all of them come from the literature. Sometimes I've provided you with the citations. Sometimes there's many, many citations. So if you're interested in these line of work, please follow up with me and I'll have a conversation with you about it. But the first tip I want to give you is that there is a lot going on in our jobs. And I don't think that we help individuals prioritize. There is no clear rule. I don't know if you all remember when you started as BCBAs, we have in Cooper a priority list of how to target behaviors. We can prioritize what to deal with because there's no way you can deal with all of it. But no one said, here's all the things you have to do as a supervisor, Ellie, and prioritize this one. What became clearly the priority is the things that you get yelled at for, or you miss, or you make error for. And they begin to take priority. And that's taking away from you feeling the level of control, but also being able to really put your time and effort in the right place. So what I want to share with you is we know the best place for you to prioritize your time from some of the research, and I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are about this, is to put it toward showing compassion and that interpersonal skill toward the individuals you serve as clients, creating excellent client relationships so that they feel they have rapport with you and can deal with their stressors with you, will go above and beyond, because when stuff hits the fan and you're having a hard time, that rapport building will save you through those tough times together because they trust you. And so I would absolutely say, in midst of fire, in midst of a lot going on, the first thing we sometimes give up is those interpersonal social skills and building that connection. And I would redo that formula and say, build that connection, make that your priority, because it may help you go through the rest. Here's some evidence for this as well. When I was at the HCOE and they continue to share their data with me, I'm in very good relations with them. I want to share with you that some of the variables that we noticed as super important in outcomes, even outcomes of care, and then also their likelihood to recommend a provider. Will you recommend a speech and language therapist? Would you recommend a behavior analyst? When it came to recommendations of care as well as the outcomes, it always came down to all of those target things about behavioral artistry, which is that bottom line, quality of life improvement, and being able to talk with the families with that rapport. That's really what that variable is right down there. The other type of information that I have that kind of shows you a little bit about this, I'll share in a minute. I wanted to share some of the questions with you. Sorry. I wanted to share some of the questions with you that kind of we asked in that behavioral artistry questionnaire, so that you would get a sense of what the families are looking for. It's things like, my priorities are taken into consideration when you come up with goals, or my provider asks if I have questions, or just checks in on me, how you doing? My therapist or the team is interested in learning about and including me in activities, or asks about my culture and my family, or that the ABA therapy staff members have demonstrated a high level of professionalism when they deal with my kid, and that the staff members have a good rapport with my child. So if you wanted to know which ones to target or what things to kind of think about a little bit more, I would say these would be the areas that you would want to improve for yourself and for your direct staff, so that you can really build those relationships that'll last you through some of the things that are coming up. The other evidence I think we have for some of this is that I had a few students of mine here, Mel Saez and Matthew Davis and Anna, were very interested in how can we get families to move toward evidence-based care. We know that there's over 750 different types of treatments for individuals with autism. And why is it that they seek and continue to employ non-evidence-based treatments? And their research came back to, it's about who you build relationships with. They go toward the people that they have better relationships with. And so this also tells us, if we want to win our families toward the science of behavior, we likely need to win their hearts. So I think that that's a part of hopefully, I've hopefully been able to convince you. But I did want to hear from you in the chat. Do you agree with this being a priority? It's a great shift. It's okay. You can think of something better. I'd love to know what other thoughts you have about this. Wonderful.
I have another thought.
Yes.
I don't know how many people here, I'd be curious to know how many people have read Miller and Rolnick's motivational interviewing book. I feel I'm writing an article. I'm kind of working on it, so it's a work in progress, but I feel like many of my colleagues have not. And though compassion is a big concept, soft skills is a big concept now in our field, without really having specifics on how to make that happen and what to do, with professional boundaries, I feel like the motivational interviewing, professional development is missing for many of us, and I have found that to be useful primarily in engaging parents. So I wanted to throw that out there because I do feel strongly about that.
I love that. I think that you're absolutely right. Giving some very specific tips about where to go with that is important. I didn't include those, so I put them in the chat. I also think Jessica Rohr and Mary Jane Wise wrote this article where they did a behavior skills training to increase the compassion skills of their frontline staff. And I think that those indicators and the performance tools are a very great example of the types of things you can target and improve. Mary Jane Wise rocks, and you know, anything she does, I'd say she does an excellent job with. And Jessica Rohr was her doctoral student, so I think that that's another tip as well. And I agree, the motivational interviewing skills themselves build rapport to upfront toward some of the things that we want to see. Excellent. So with that, I'm going to introduce tip 2 here so that I can take you across the 5 tips. And that is that I think there's a lot for us to do, and we need to figure out how to work smarter rather than continuing to work harder. So when things get tough, and as our frontline staff begin to leave, and we have colleagues who may be suffering or not coming to work, we might have colleagues that may be on leave for health issues. What happens is more work comes our way, and we tend to roll up our sleeves and just continue to pick up the work rather than to take a moment to take a back step and say, wait a minute, let me think about how can I do this smarter, because I shouldn't continue to work harder. And I'm going to give you some of these as tips, but the big question to ask yourself is, how can you work smarter, not harder, depending on the nature of your job. So I might not be capturing the right one for you today, but I hope that this is a question you ask yourself, is how can I take a moment, take a step back, take a deep breath, rather than just jump in, roll up my sleeves and continue to work. We are constantly dealing with a balancing act. No doubt, insurance providers have placed these contingencies knowing exactly what they're doing to us and other healthcare providers. And that is, we're just working around the clock as quickly as we can for that which is billable. Everything else we do is simply not billable. And they know that. They already know that. But this is about access to care and about being able to pay for services. So, you know, we are constantly balancing that, which itself is a lot to kind of figure out and balance. So we have to figure out how to have good time management skills to be able to not burn ourselves out. And I think that, I don't know about you, but for me, no one had ever sat me down and said, here's what your world is going to look like, and here are some time management skills, Ellie, how you can survive what's about to happen to you. It just happened. And then before I knew it, there was no more time for the gym. Then before I knew it, there was no more time for showers. And then, you know, I was cutting into my sleep. So, you know, you're just kind of sparing time, and there's no managing your time better, because you're not taking the time to learn, how can I balance this differently? So I want to give you some tips, but the big tip here is to work smarter means to kind of give yourself some new skills about your time management so that you can balance things out. You should absolutely be getting showers, appropriate sleep. You should absolutely be able to have time with family and enjoy your life, in addition to being a wonderful practitioner and a wonderful leader in an organization that's providing care to other people. So here are some quick tips, for example, that I know that I wasn't taught. So sometimes I use them just in case they're new to you. And that is, instead of doing your to-do list in the morning, I really recommend doing a to-do list the night before. This really helps with getting some sleep. I don't know how many of you like to lay in bed and think about all the things that are due the next day. That used to be me, until I learned actually the best way to write your to-do list is to write it and then bid your things good night, leave the workstation, know that you're not returning to it until later. And that way, what you're doing is you're returning to it fresh in the morning. And in case you remember something, you're actually encouraged to walk back to your to-do list in that space and write it there so that you can begin to have better sleep and separate it. So if you knew this already, Good for you. I didn't. It took me many years to not take my to-do list to bed and then wake up in the morning to try to write it. The other thing I've learned is to look a week ahead. I've noticed that I used to very much say what's due tomorrow. My calendar used to run me that way. And then as things that had bigger deadlines and larger things would come up, I would get stuck because I hadn't planned them right. And so looking ahead on a Monday to the entire week is very helpful. And usually you want a week about 2 weeks ahead so that you have planned for the blocks of time you're going to spend doing things. And last but not least, absolutely, if you're an organizational leader or in a position to run other supervisors or think more holistically about the organization, do that quarterly. Other tips are organizational systems that make your life easier so you're not wasting time looking for files. There are ways to do this with your group. I won't have time to go into every one of them. And also, if you really learn time management skills, you actually know the person has time management skills because they will plan for time stealers. They buffer in their calendar for time stealers. That's the level to which you become good at knowing, you know what, nothing's going to go as planned. And so putting out fires is a part of your job. It's actually a big part of your job. And if you're not planning for them, your calendar is going to hell almost every time that you put it together. So you definitely want to learn to do things called forecasting and place some of these things in your calendar. Now, did you all know these tactics? Am I boring you? Can I get a sense of where I'm at with this group a little bit? Okay. Okay. I don't feel like I wasted your time. Excellent. Thank you so much. If you'd like to know more such tips, please go ahead and look up Nicole Gravina's paper on leadership imperative on time management. She actually goes through the forecasting procedure if you're interested in that. But I think that this is a part of learning to manage your time better, to work smarter, not harder. And then the other thing I want to share with you is this is also true for the time you spend in meetings. If you're a leader and you're holding meetings, there's definitely articles and ways to help you improve that time so people are not spending wasteful time. And I won't have time for this because we're running behind a little bit. So I'm going to actually just go ahead and give you the code that you're supposed to write down or know, which is flexible for now. And then am I correct? Everybody has to write that in the chat box, Natalia, or something? Okay, got it. So please type that into the chat box.
Thank you.
All right, very nice. I actually used the word flexible because I'm going to use it in this next tip. I hope that provided you all with enough time to go ahead and write flexible into the chat box. And that is that the third tip I have is to find a balance by increasing your own flexibility about the position and about the job. When we were trained, many of us were trained for best practices, and there's a lot of expectations we have of ourselves. And, you know, and those are the professionals I love to work with. The individuals who are very hard on themselves and they want the best for their families, and they think about it around the clock, and they care a lot about what they're doing. But I also very much worry about those professionals because there is a notion of perfection. There is a notion of I can do it all that can really take away and increase their fatigue and take away from them being able to sustain that level of perfection. So although I really love to see everybody as motivated and as caring about our families and about what we do, which I think is super important, I also want to mention that sister and brother professions like marriage and family therapy have actually found that being, you know, this sense of I need to be perfect, the sense of I owe the family a lot can actually burn people out because we're dealing with a lot of compassion fatigue. So we have to learn to balance that out. We have to be able to say to ourselves, how much can I get done today? I can't be this hard on myself. And that I'm here for a long game rather than a short marathon if I'm going to be able to help a lot of families, because otherwise you can help quite a few, but then if you don't last, you're not able to help that much over time. And then the other, thank you. The other thing I want to mention is to learn to say no politely. One of the reasons I mentioned this is I do think people are learning to say no beautifully and they're trying to say no, but I want to encourage you to say no proactively. I've noticed sometimes individuals don't say no, and then they get pushed to a place where their no comes off as passive aggressive, or it's not really the thing that they should have said no to. I saw you laugh there, Natalia, because you can probably relate. So I encourage you to really do your time management, figure out your basket of things up front and be proactive about your no's, so that it's not a no out of a place of I'm in a corner, I can't anymore, no, because that kind of no is not very nice or polite. It's a little late. So don't do that to yourself, is my tip. And really, to find that psychological flexibility means that instead of this constant level of guilt, I'm going to share with you something that I really wish I had learned earlier in my life, but it is absolutely something I practice today. If you are watching me, if you know anything about my life, you know I'm biting way too much, more than I should every day. And that's because I know I have one life to live. I'm a victim of my own ambition. I have a lot to do in this lifetime, and I know it. But with that, I've had to learn a lot of skills as to how to balance my life. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to last. And one of the skills I've learned really well is through meditation. My mentor, Pat Fryman, really encouraged me to learn to meditate for this reason. You can turn it on and turn it off, meaning you learn, I'm at work, it's high stress, stuff is due, got to get things done. And then when you're not at work, don't carry it elsewhere. And vice versa. Learn to walk into an environment and dump the previous environment, so that you're not, particularly as women, we are much more probable to suffer from this, where all of our lives are happening all at the same time in our head. And we fool ourselves into thinking we're excellent time managers. But what that's doing is we're hypersensitive, hyper alert all the time, which can really burn us out and increase our stress. So learn to turn it on and turn it off. Give yourself moments where you take a break, so that you can just begin to identify what it means to have silence about something you can go back to and worry about tomorrow. It really means, oh, I got to come back and worry about this tomorrow. And I'm not gonna, this is it. This is my last hour of what I'm going to deal with it. And this can be a huge skill to learn. And it really begins with learning to do just 5 minutes of meditation. So I really recommend it. Become much more intentional about your time, intentional about when you're at work versus when you're with family, when you're with a partner, when you're out with friends. So you're not carrying stuff in the background and constantly feeling like, you're guilty or you've not done enough. And you'll find you'll get a lot more done when you come back to work in those times. With that, it's going to take us right into the discussion of self-care. And I want to talk a little bit about self-care. The culture is growing in this area, and I really wish this culture had grown much more when I was younger. I do love the idea of and recognition of self-care. I also think that it's quite misused and misunderstood sometimes by the youth that's really advocating for this, which is fantastic, but it's misused if it's escape. And I want to make sure that we use self-care in a way to manage our lives and to make ourselves stronger, able to deal with the things we put ourselves through and the things we want to deal with. If self-care is just escape from work, it just means we'll find work more aversive next day to come back to. If we just run away to try to run away, then coming back is harder. So I want to make sure to differentiate good self-care from unhealthy self-care, which may be to just run away. And that really requires that you gain some stress management skills. I know Jonathan Tarbox does this for a very small fee that goes towards students, for example. I highly recommend it. I also have a colleague, Tom Zabo, that does a 1-hour discussion on stress management. They both come from that ACT background and they do a wonderful job. But absolutely, stress management strategies to be able to tackle your own thoughts, to be able to tackle some of the circumstances you're dealing with is needed, because as healthcare providers, we not only have our own life that's happening and the organizational circumstances that are occurring, we become the bearers of our families, our schools, all of their circumstances as well. And so with that, we definitely want to learn to manage our own stress. There's clear evidence, and if anybody is interested, actually this book has been updated, so I should put the newer picture, but this is a wonderful book filled with lots and lots of research evidence for how, if we are at work and someone calls us, or if a fire occurs, or family is in trouble, or something happens, what happens is we're running to work much like a firefighter does, right? So our heart rate goes up, we're sort of working ourselves up, and how that sort of circumstance has aftershock effects for our body, because we've just put it through panic. But if we are exercising such that we're putting our body through appropriate under stimulus control, high level, high intensity workout, our body is more than capable of dealing with those moments without the aftershock. So there's some clear evidence that exercise prepares us for stress. Does that make sense? So I would definitely say do it, do it, do it. And then there is very, very good evidence as well from the National Sleep Foundation that sleeping less than 6 hours each night is a great predictor of burnout, on-the-job burnout. So much so, hospitals help their staff get those 8 hours of sleep. This was, remember earlier, I talked about the shift changes they did for staff. It was partly to help make sure that everybody had adequate, appropriate sleep that they were getting, because it's clear if you're not getting adequate sleep, you're much more likely to burn out. Now, a note on sleep, I don't know about you, but you know, I needed this, so I'm going to share this thought with you. It's not about binging. So it isn't about I'm going to get 4 hours of sleep each night or 5 hours, but I'll catch up on the weekend, or I'll have more sleep on a Sunday. Actually, that's bad sleep. That's not at all good sleep. Good sleep is about systematic sleep. So it's about getting that 7 hours every night. If you can make it 8 hours every night, it's about your body knowing when it's going to sleep and when it's getting up. So the more reliable you can make it, the less stress you're going to feel altogether. So, and then of course, there is managing of your nutrition. There's in fact some studies that have been done for healthcare professionals regarding nutrition and good care, because we don't eat well, because we're on the go, we're in the car. Hospital staff eat from vending machines. So given the fact that quite often we're not treating our bodies right, there's good studies to provide evidence that, you know, making sure that we're taking care of it through good food also matters. And then of course, you know, learn that self-care involves some of that meditation and mindfulness in addition to these things. So it's about carving out the time for you. So self-care really just means carve out the time for exercise. Carve out the time for food, treat that as a part of how you can prepare your body for what it has to deal with daily as it goes into the firefighting situation. Any questions before I cover my last tip here today?
I have a question about how would you delicately suggest self-care and sleep to like someone your son's age who does not want to ever sleep and goes to a bunch of concerts and things like that, which is like his self-care, but he's always so tired. So I'm like, sleep. I'm like, no.
You know, that is an excellent point, and it's a tough one, right? Because it has to catch up to him. First, in your 20s, you can sleep a little less and it doesn't catch up to you as quickly. And second, you know, this is more around make sure you're not burning out from work. So work has to become meaningful, I think, for that generation, for them to want to prepare their body for work. My son was getting the best sleep when he was fighting. So when he was doing MMA work, because he knew his body needed to prepare for that setting. So find something that motivates him to be healthy is really what it takes. And if that's not where his gig is right now, don't pick that battle in this moment, because he's not going to hear you.
I'm like, I cannot do that.
Yeah, that's, and as soon as MMA was not his gig, that was not the deal. But thankfully, once he went on to another sport, like making your body healthy is important. It has to be important. It has to become motivationally valuable for you. That's an excellent point. I'll keep brewing on that. I want to talk with you about tip 7, and this one actually I've stolen from a fantastic writer about effective habits for leaders. Stephen Covey has a book on the 7 habits of most effective leadership. This has been a book that's been around for over 50 years, and it's still a bestseller. And if you ever speak to anybody in organizations or organizational management or industrial organizational work, they know of this book. But this is a tip that I really, really feel every one of us can benefit from. All of them we can, but this one I love, particularly in a discussion of occupational wellness. Here, he tells a story about 2 arbors. These are people who cut trees. And he talks about how both arbors were hired to help cut down trees in the forest. And the first arbor is highly motivated to get as many trees cut as quickly as possible. And he is just going at it. He's using his saw. He's cutting trees, cutting trees, cutting trees. And the second arbor is just as motivated to get as many trees cut. But he takes a lot of breaks. In fact, about every 30 minutes or so, he sits on a stump, wipes his brow, and sharpens his saw. And the first arbor becomes kind of judgmental about this and looks at him and scoffs because he's kind of slowing down. First arbor is cutting about twice as many trees as the second arbor is cutting in that time frame. But over time, the saw of the first arbor becomes dull. So he's working harder to cut trees, and he's working harder as he's exhausted. So he's slowed down because he can't cut as many trees with his dull saw and his exhaustion. But that first arbor continues to cut at that same rate, catches up to the first arbor and beats him and moves forward. And I think that the story is to remind us that those frequent things to take, those breaks to take, can help us maintain and to help us continue moving forward. And that if we are short-sighted, it might seem like we're being lazy or we're not doing the job, but that to protect ourselves is a part of being able to do a good job in the long run. So a part of this is about being selective about where you're at. Choose an organization that helps you sharpen your saw, doesn't judge you when you sit down on a stump, but rather encourages you to take a deep breath, sit on a stump, sharpen your saw, and get back up, and helps you do that. And then be loyal to that organization. Do not mistake that that comes easy. I do think we need to teach people in our field to also recognize that we've created a vicious cycle as we move from organization to organization, that if an organization is trying to provide us with care, or trying to sharpen our saw, or trying to provide us with care and health, that when we leave, we punish those behaviors. So we collectively also need to help each other both kind of revive our field together. And with that, I just wondered if you all had any other suggestions as to how you could sharpen your saw, maybe something that I can learn from.
I get trashy, mindless, fun novels that I could just sink my teeth into, and I'm not totally intellectually stimulated by life, which is
Okay.
constantly.
I like it. Trashy novels. I'm curious about the content.
I mean, that's like a bad way of saying it, but just very, mindless, everyday, fun reading.
Yeah,
I do that
makes-
with
I love
reality
it.
TV shows because they're mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same idea.
Perfect. That is exactly the same idea. It's that turning it on and turning it off. It allows the turn on and turn off, which is very good. Other ways to also sharpen your saw include increasing your skills, like getting time management skills or signing up for those. At the end of the day, you're responsible for your own happiness, and burnout is a part of that, which means taking care of yourself can help you sustain in an organization. I again say this with absolute recognition that it's both. It takes two. So the 5 tips we talked about today is to prioritize your time, put it toward family care and those security building relationships so that they can withstand change, they can withstand things that are going on for you. Work smarter and not harder, and then give up on that perfection and to find a balance and become more flexible. Be good to yourself by taking care of that body, giving it sleep, giving it good food, and recognizing that your body's got to go through your daily work with you. And so for your mind and body to be able to do that, you've got to take care of it. And to sharpen your saw, take the time to take a break, take the time to self-evaluate, add to your skill sets, and learn stress management skills, learn time management skills, and all of those good things. With that, supervision is absolutely the most important aspect of our profession. I would argue you are the center of our profession. You're what everyone sees, who everyone interacts with. You care for your RBTs, you care for your families. Therefore, compassion fatigue is super real. So you need to shield yourself, and we must hand you the shields to be able to do that. And hopefully that means the roller coaster of your jobs will not feel as scary and you're more prepared. It's nevertheless still a roller coaster. And with that, that's your last code today, which is success. And if you know anything about me, I'm the butterfly woman. Together, I think we can accomplish a lot. Alone, we flap our wings and very little can happen. So I love that you called me here today, and I hope that we can continue to do things together.
The most powerful cat.
That's right.
Yes, thank you so much. That was incredible. I wanted to have a few minutes to see if anyone had any questions, either unmute yourself or ask in the chat. And then, well, right before we do that, I'll let everyone know that if you're a paid member, Natalia will be getting your CEUs to you. This will count as a supervision, so that's exciting. Always need those. And then if you are a not paid member, you can send your $15 to our PayPal, which is on the link should be on our website, or we can put it in the chat as well. And also, if you would like to become a member, you can apply on our website and pay your dues there, and then you get free CEUs for the whole year. So we have quite a few events, and then also our conference. So lots of good CEU opportunities. But any questions?
Jenna, I just wanted to add really quick before everybody hops off, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to include a link to the feedback form that we have for the CEU event. Please try to access it and fill it out, and I'll get it on my drive, and I'll provide CEUs after the feedback form has been filled out.
Great. Thank you so much, Natasha. Well, everybody also please take a picture with us for our social media, if you would please. Either show your face or just give me a beautiful smile so we can post that on our social media. All right, 3, 2, 1. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jenny.
Love that.
Jenny, you've been rocking that. You've absolutely been rocking that. You weren't here earlier, but I was definitely telling everyone I'm quite impressed. You've been doing a great job with that.
Oh, thank you. I have a marketing background, so.
Okay, then that's very clear.
I texted her I was like, make sure you're getting lots of good pics for her website and for our social media.
Oh, thank you so much, because this is not a strength for me. I definitely appreciate your help.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kazemi. I wrote down all the 5 tips and I'm looking over them and I'm kind of reflecting on my own kind of growth over the last decade of being a supervisor. And I'm thinking, where I need to improve and things like that. And, I like, as much as even we know that some of these things are the things that we should do, it's incredible how many times I catch myself not doing it. And how many times I catch myself saying, saying to my supervisees, do as I say, not as I do. So I'm like, I know I'm emailing you at 9 p.m., but you shouldn't be working. So don't respond until tomorrow. Please don't. I know that I'm doing it. I'm not modeling the right behavior. So, I guess there's just room for growth for all of us in all of these areas, regardless of how long we've been doing it or how new to the field we are. So this was a really great presentation and really great tips.
Oh, I'm so glad, Natalia. I'm so glad that this was helpful. I know you were quite excited about me coming, so I
Yes.
wouldn't want to fail you. I also have to share with you, since you kindly shared and put yourself out there vulnerably, that even though you're telling them to not do what you're doing, you're actually teaching them to do what you're doing.
I know.
So stop doing it.
I know. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, truly, like, there really is, there's this is a really important thing for all of us to reflect on and to kind of build self-awareness around. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? Please feel free to hop on. Again, please fill out the Google Doc form that I just sent up there too before you guys hop off.
And then we're planning on having a CEU night in July, ethics grab bag, because that's always a good one. So if you guys, Jenny will start posting soon. You guys can send us your ethical dilemmas and we will try to debunk them and have discussion on that for our July CEU night. And then we'll take August off, and then September we're having a guest speaker that I'm not sure we've secured yet, so we won't say the name unless Ben has confirmation, but we have a good guest speaker.
I do.
You do? Okay, go ahead.
I do. We're going to have Dr. Carl Sundberg, and he's going to be speaking on beyond the VB map. So it's going to be some really exciting stuff about the VB map, and he'll be doing. And then in October he'll be doing a workshop here in Austin for a day. So it's going to be very, very fun, and I think it's going to have some. He's very excited about what's he's going to bring out. Him and Mark have worked on some things together, and it's just going to be a really cool. I think it's going to really take people beyond the VMAP, like beyond the scoring of the VMAP, and really help people write better goals, and just really help our clients more and
Nice.
use the VMAP in an even better way. So there's never